So today's video is going to be very much to the point, talking about my Inktober project, where I am thus far. We are now on, I think as the day that I'm actually filming, we're about 7 days in. So I'm going to show you as much progress as I can. And then we're going to, I'm going to show you something that's in progress. So you'll actually get a sneak peek of something that's coming up, but it's not fully inked or completed just yet. So this little book is where we're doing the project, where I'm doing the project. It's a very small moleskin. I think it's like 3x5 approximately. It's one of their smallest notebooks that they make. Now I chose to use moleskin because as far as journals go, especially these small journals that go with you everywhere, I will say it takes a punch. When I first started using small moleskin or small journals like this, I first bought a knockoff journal, and that thing has since fallen apart. It's just the seam broke, and everything's just kind of fallen apart on it. But I've had other moleskins since then, true moleskins, not a knockoff, and they hold up really well. And the pages are nice and thick as well. So if you've been following me over on Instagram, you will have already seen a few pages from this project. So I'm not really sure if I should describe to you every single concept, but we'll see. The actual theme, of course, I'm doing this for Inktober, but there is a unifying theme in this project, and it's called darkness. I want to say that when I first started working on this, I wanted it to have a unifying concept, almost like a graphic novel, but there's not truly a story, because I really didn't want to have to follow any rules. Just wanted to sketch every day and then ink and all that. But I wanted it to be more in the spooky genre, shall we say. And so I think the cover alludes to the darkness. And this is where all bad things come from. All right. And so when I first came up with the concept, this little saying popped in my head. It basically defines the concept. Darkness hides in corners and places where only your nightmares know what exists there. And again, just that dark circle, that endless void of blackness. And I love the ink, the cool, deep colors of the blacks are just, I think even in person, it's even more impacting and lovely. At least in my opinion. Now I will say, because this is the smallest journal that they have, this little moleskin, some of my illustrations are not, they're more in the sketchy range, I feel. They're not like, if I was truly doing an illustrated graphic novel, I would not use this. I would probably make this just be something that I work out concepts in. Then I would make them larger, things that I like to work on, and do those larger and better details. But all in all, I think it's fine, and I think that you'll think it's fine too. So again, moving into the void, I put follow me. And again, the void is back there in the dark, spooky woods. All I've been using is Tombow markers, and of course pencil to get started with. Then I ink it with micron pens, that sort of thing. And I have a few like Sakara pens, and then I use Tombow markers. These are not alcohol markers, they're a water-based marker. So it didn't bleed through for the most part on these pages. These pages are very thick, by the way, in the moleskin. So the first day, the first official day, those other pages are like intro pages. And the first official day is this image of a spaceship showing up on the landscape. Like I said, I'm not going to try to go into a true story of what all this means. It's just supposed to be spooky. Then this is a concept that has come up several times in my sketchbooks and loose pieces of paper. Just a girl with a hole in her heart, pointing to it. I've done this a few times. In fact, if you looked at my YouTube video last week when I showed you my other journal with random illustrations, you might have noticed a girl very similar in the back of that journal. But I wanted to bring this concept into here because she keeps appearing in various, what I would call more my illustrative types of styles. I typically don't share my illustrative styles that much, but I like this image. There's something about this that also reminds me of like Japanese art or an old spooky Japanese film. One that really rings out my mind is Akira Kurosawa's movie called Quiet Dawn that was made, I believe, about like 1964. It's very, it's called Ghost Stories in translation, but it's a very interesting, dark, spooky kind of movie if you're into that. On the next page, we have this girl just looking kind of in a state of despair and just staring down at this black pond with all the spooky kind of moody trees behind her. And then I love dark woods and, you know, cabins and houses and things in the woods. I think those always lead to an element of spookiness, so that's what this one's all about. I will say that these markers are not great. Like a truly, like if you're wanting to blend, I didn't feel they do have a blending thing, but I was also worried about saturating these pages too much because I was trying to illustrate on both pages in this book. And these are technically the last 2 pages for the first week. This lady hanging by a tree. It's just more of like, you know, a spooky, I don't know, like I guess a suicide or something. I was actually thinking about that movie, The Conjuring, where the ghost was hanging from the tree. Because she had killed herself and she was still like haunting the tree. It's, if you haven't seen that movie, it's a slightly disturbing image. There was an old spooky book that I used to have called Frankenstein that was illustrated by a famous illustrator, and there's an image that sticks out in my head from that book that reminds me of this as well. And I'll put the illustrator's name up on the screen here. And then this was the end where this girl's just in the woods again, hiding away from something imminent and dark. That said, in the back you'll see kind of how things get worked out. I'll come up with a concept and usually like just something will pop in my head and I'll just do a quick sketch. And then as I have time, it gets worked out. So I thought this is something that we'll work a little bit on for this video. And then you can see my process of working this out a bit. And I don't know if we'll get to complete it, but we'll get started. I already started, the image was initially very, very sketchy. And I've since then started working out some of my details in pencil, making sure that my figure looked more like what I wanted it to be. And that's what we'll work on today. So these are the pencils and pens that I've been using for the most part. Here's my pencil, some Tombow markers, and my various microns and things like these Pigma Senseis. There's variations on the sizes. There's some of them that are brush tipped, some of them are thin, all sorts of sizes, but this is what I'm basically using. So I realize it's actually getting late, so I'm probably going to be doing part of this today and part of this maybe tomorrow. So I'm starting off with my very smallest micron, just to have it where my lines are tight, and I know what I'm getting for my first go around on this. But I feel pretty confident about some of these major elements that I've made sure are in here. Wanting to make sure that my lines for the fence was all worked out the way I liked it to be before I made them permanent. Because that's what this is. It's permanent after this point with these pens that I have, the microns and all that. I'm not going into too much detail. I just want to get my first level lines down. Now what I will say is that because these pages are so small in this journal, sometimes when I have a figure very small, the face is probably one of the most difficult things to do. So that's why, again, I want to make sure I have the smallest pen. And I'm really just kind of like indicating the features on her face. And then I'm using her hair to help me hide some of the details that are really just too difficult to get into. And then I'll be using my Tombow markers to also help me put her in the shade. You really have to play with figures. If you feel like you don't have the ability to depict them from your imagination, you can come up with like a quick sketch, and then you can use like a reference. You can open up Google and just say something random like girl sitting on the ground, let's say. And if you do that, you can just look at all the images that come up from that. And one of them, more than likely, will be similar to what you're doing. Or maybe it's turned the other direction. You can save it on your phone, and then you can go into edit mode and flip things. So she's in the other direction. You might have to make some small tweaks to it, but often that helps. If you just need a little something extra to help you out with your concept. But I do like to start with my own concepts and my own attempt at it first, and then I use the references to assist me, not to handicap me, really. I want to be able to do this the best I can to my own abilities. I've got this little crow sitting on the fence, and I got a feeling this may not be the only crow. And I drew this crow from my imagination, but I think I'm gonna possibly put one or two extra in the tree that's above her. So for that, I'll probably look up some references. And then I turn my book as I need it, whichever direction helps me to easily get my lines going the best. You know, whichever direction, pulling towards you is always good way to go when you're trying to get a good line. So this is basically like a fence that separates two fields. And I've actually got just a tiny bit of space underneath this fence. So, because usually a fence has to have a little bit of space underneath it, so it's not hitting the ground. So there's a little bit. I think stereotypically it would be more space than that, but I think for the purpose of this, it works out fine. So the gate is slightly open in this illustration. And that really is more of a concept of, or me thinking about composition a little bit. Because often, composition-wise, I've heard that if you just put a fence up or something directly in the path, it keeps the viewer stuck right at the fence versus ever going past it. You never get let in, especially if you have something that you really want to show off. It creates an obstacle, a visual obstacle. So I've got the fence cracked open here for us to visually be able to walk past the obstacle, even though she is the main subject. She is the main, what would you call that? She is the main character of this particular illustration, but I did want to showcase the distance as well. So that's why I left it cracked. Like she's run away or something, and she's hiding out in this place in the woods at the gate. And then I could even use some of my line works to suggest like wood. I can make like a little knot. I think I'll do that to all my woods. Often wood is cut in the direction of the grain. So that's a thought. You wouldn't want your wood going like this way or this way. You usually would want it in the direction of the grain. So that's why I did that. And these will get shaded in eventually a bit as well. I want there to be like a little bit of distress and cracking on the wood as well. So, and that also usually happens in the direction of the cut. Even though you will see my pencil, I just shaded it this way, but that is not That is not how I plan on inking anything. It's all, you know, and you have to think things through. Like, I've got this crow over here, so I don't want to make my lines too dark. I don't want to put a complicated knot or anything behind him because I want him to stick out. Again, this fence, I didn't look at any references. I've just drawn enough fences that I think this looks pretty good. So that I didn't feel like I had to look at anything. I actually did not end up looking at anything for the girl either. I kept playing with her until I felt like her figure looked appropriate in that position. So there's our start. And then I've got all these grasses and things that are growing up. I think it's winter time for the most part. So it will take me a while to get all these brambles in here the way I want them to be, so that I don't have to work out every part of this fence. And I may want to look at some images of bushes in the winter or something like that. You could put that into Google as well, just to give you some ideas of maybe how to accomplish that. Also using my Tombow markers to make a grayscale, because what happens when a lot of clumps of all these limbs get together, they actually create basically a gray scale. All right, so I think I'm going to stop here, and then when I resume tomorrow, I'll probably have to speed up the video, but you at least have seen a start to how my process is working out for this project. And I may not show you the illustration to completion, but you'll see a little bit more detail being added in. And now you know a little bit about my problem solving steps and how I go about working from my imagination and using references when are needed. And that helps build your skills. All right, back at this again tomorrow.